Hello Giants fans, welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. We got another subscriber today, welcome aboard. Somehow I just know we're going to reach 100 by the end of this year. I think that the growth of this channel is great. Thank you so much everybody who's subscribed. It's a big moment in baseball right now, lots going on and it's good stuff to dive into. But specifically today, I want to talk to all of you who may be upset by a particular event that just occurred. And we're going to get into that, but first I want to briefly go over the game today. The Giants lost to the Diamondbacks 4-3 in 11 innings. It was a close one. It looked like the Giants were about to pull off a win. Very unfortunate and very disappointing. They had a bullpen day again today with Jacob Junis pitching 3 scoreless innings to start it all. And it does seem like the Giants are still sticking with their strategy of sometimes just bullpenning their way through games and kind of throwing everybody in there. And that's what they did today. It's been successful, honestly, in a lot of games for the Giants this year. And they held the D-backs down to 2 runs through 9. Wilmer Flores, he hit a 2-run home run, and the game was tied at 2-2 at the end of 9 innings. In the top of the 10th, Diamondbacks got a run. But in the bottom, Brandon Crawford scored to tie the game on a wild pitch. So it was 3-3. With 2 outs and 2 runners on base, the Giants were just so close to walking it off right there and winning. But Wilmer Flores struck out. He couldn't repeat what he did previously in the game. He struck out to end the 10th inning and send the game to the 11th. And Taylor Rogers came in and he gave up a double to put the Diamondbacks ahead 4-3, and then the Giants just could not come back in the bottom of the 11th inning. There was a wild pitch that sent the automatic runner Casey Schmidt to third, but they couldn't bring him home. So very disappointing after it looked like the Giants were about to walk it off in the 10th. The Giants have really improved their performance on the field lately, and extra inning games in particular have been a key strength for the Giants this year. And clutch hitting, it's just been a thing that when the Giants are at their best, they can do. And it helped them to win the previous series against the Red Sox. But this time, today, it just went against them in the critical situations. And they drop Game 1 of this series against the Diamondbacks. So, disappointing, but they have a very solid winning record. Excuse me. And now, you'll notice that this video is titled a little bit differently than normal. And that's because of just the importance of the topic that I wanted to discuss. I'm sure many of you are disappointed, probably to varying degrees, by the fact that the Angels took Shohei Ohtani off the trade market. The Angels are keeping him. They're not going to trade him, but they're going to try to make a run for the playoffs in Ohtani's last year with them. And the question is, what do we make of that? I know the natural first instinct is going to be to just be depressed and say, there goes the Giants. Great opportunity. It's not that everybody even thought the Giants should go for Ohtani, but I think that was just something that Giants fans were super hopeful about. And to have it not happen, what does that mean? Well, first of all, let's just take time out for a minute and look at this decision on the part of the Angels. So they've got a winning record at this point. They have a chance at contending for the playoffs. No, this isn't Angels Baseball 101, but pretend it is for a second. How do we analyze the Angels' decision? The Angels did exactly the right thing. I'm sorry, but that's true. I mean, and if you were coming here hoping to hear some rant about the Angels being so stupid not to trade Ohtani, that's not what I'm going to say about it, because it's just not true. The Angels, just from their perspective, and we had to, if the Giants were going to get Ohtani, what we really had to hope for was one of two things. Number one, that the Angels just fell from contention by this time and had a pretty solidly established losing record. Or number two, that the front office just made a bad decision to trade Ohtani. Maybe the prospects they get for him were too tempting, and they just did it wrong. Those were the things that, in my mind, we had to hope for. Because the Angels, they're doing the right thing from their organization's perspective in not trading Ohtani. In fact, I'll take it a step further and say, I think that this is one of the keys to the successful management of a baseball team, that you know when to go for it. When the trade deadline rolls around, or even, I mean, this could be in the off season, but I think particularly when the trade deadline goes around, you've got a record where you clearly see that it could go either way. It's actually a key strength that you know when it's time to go for it. I think particularly this applies when it's with a team that's just had a long playoff drought and a struggle getting back into contention. When they get to the trade deadline and see it could go either way, they could contend and they have a chance. Knowing when it's time to make a full-blown push for it, I actually think that is a key strength. And yeah, particularly when you're dealing with a team that's just not been in the playoffs for a long time, or they've been rebuilding and they have to get back into contention sometime. And this is Ohtani's last year with the Angels. So what we're dealing with is a situation in which the Angels just got smart. They decided to make the right decision. They're contending for the playoffs. It's just Angels did the right thing. That's all we got to say in that regard. Now, what bearing does it have on the Giants situation? Now, I know the thing that we all probably had in our minds about Ohtani coming to the Giants, or just being, what we had in our minds, the image, what we pictured was Ohtani hitting home runs in a Giants uniform and throwing shutout pitching performances. We had all kinds of just vivid imagery of what Ohtani would do in a Giants uniform. And even maybe just feel so happy in San Francisco that he would end up signing a long-term contract with the Giants when the offseason came around. That's what we were thinking, and just plenty of playoff moments too, I'm sure. I mean, we wanted Ohtani on the Giants, and this is the picture that we had in our minds. Maybe some big playoff moment where he hits a grand slam or strikes out a hitter with the bases loaded, just a ton of that. Doing a lot, being a big part of the Giants' postseason run, and just everything. Sky's the limit. Anything you can imagine. Ohtani was basically the hero in our minds, and that included mine. Very correct. That would work out. That would have just been so accurate, I think, if Ohtani had come to the Giants. But just think about the event again. He was removed from the trade market. And the key to understanding this is that you can't isolate that event from reality and just look at it by itself, because it means nothing. You can judge nothing by isolating an event from the context and from reality. Here's what I mean. Was it a guaranteed thing? Like, are we dealing with a scenario that involved two possibilities? Ohtani stays with the Angels or he goes to the Giants? No, not at all. In fact, if you remember, that there was a pretty serious competitor in the National League West for acquiring Ohtani. That was the Dodgers. So there was a possibility that Ohtani would stay in LA. Yes, but he'd just be playing for the Giants' division rivals. And just imagine if that had happened. So, you can kind of see where this is going. Do we know who he would have gone to? Well, no. So we can't say, based on, and we'll never know, we can't say whether the Angels' decision to pull Ohtani off the trade market is a tragedy or if it's the best thing that could have happened. There's no way to know that. And there is no guarantee that the Giants would have got him. It could have been the Dodgers. If the Giants could have been all of that stuff that we admire Ohtani for doing, he could have been doing that against the Giants in a Dodgers uniform, for all we know. So, honestly, maybe the thing we should feel, at least partly, is some relief over this. And you remember me saying, too, that part of the urgency for the Giants in doing everything they could to land Ohtani was the fact that the Dodgers might get him if they didn't. That was the other side. It was Ohtani's presence or absence on the Giants roster was maybe only half of the picture. If he went to the Dodgers, and let's say they played each other in the postseason again, it's just, well, a pretty scary battle there, wouldn't you say? So Ohtani is sticking with the Angels. He's not going anywhere. That is nothing to melt down about. And yes, that the ideal scenario, despite all of the prospects the Giants would have had to give up, and it's important to remember this because I'm not changing my position on this at all. The ideal scenario would have been for the Giants to acquire Ohtani. But just even on the side of the prospects they would have had to give up, we might as well look on the positive side of that and say, okay, now the Giants' farm system, it won't be depleted, and they're not going to be put under pressure to make as huge of an offer as they can. And that is probably not significant comfort by itself, given that I still believe that it would have been ideal for the Giants to acquire Ohtani. Still, when you put that together with the fact that there was a possibility the Dodgers could get him, this whole thing, it just clearly demonstrates that this whole thing is not something to melt down about. And we don't, it's just the Giants don't have very good recent history of adding a whole lot at the trade deadline. They might have learned their lesson and decided to be super aggressive now, but even so, with a big, huge name like Ohtani, would they have been successful at landing him? It's just, I don't know. It could have saved the Giants. My point is, for all that we know, Ohtani coming off the trade market, becoming no longer available, that could have saved the Giants. So seeing what happened here, we're not going to melt down over it. And there are other options for the Giants at tomorrow's trade deadline, and it's going to be crucially important that they take advantage of them. It's all ready to go for a playoff run if the Giants do the right thing and add to their roster. So I just wanted to make it clear that this is not the end of everything for the Giants. It's the way things have developed, and the Giants just respond to that and move on with the trade candidates that are on the free agent market. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. We will find out the actual level of commitment the Giants have to a playoff run this year. Like I said yesterday, you can really only get very limited information on this. The Dodgers have already added 2 pitchers to their pitching staff, so it's the Giants' turn to answer that with acquisitions of their own. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions and comments. You know where to do it. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.